welcome to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
In this podcast, we're going to be talking about art versus the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Can you separate the two? Do they come as a package deal? Do the views of the artist matter if the art is great?
Yeah.
But before we jump into the conversation, I just want to let you guys know that this podcast is sponsored and brought to you by hint.co/deeplycurious, betterhelp.com/Jensen, and by our new merch, shop.codyjensen.com. Hint is a flavored water company, and they make like fruit flavor infused water with zero sugar, zero sweetener, just zero everything. It's water.
Just delicious water.
And it doesn't taste like tap water.
Yeah.
It tastes like I'm drinking cherry sparkling water. Sarah's drinking blackberry sparkling water. Sarah's more of a still girl.
I am.
And she loves the apple crisp.
Yes.
I'm more of a sparkling guy. I've been saying that peach is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually changed my mind.
Oh.
I think the strawberry kiwi is actually my favorite.
Really?
Yes, I've flipped and flopped.
Yeah.
If you want to check out Hint Water, you can do that by going to hint.co/deeplycurious.
Yes.
Okay, jumping into this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I have been talking about this. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, actually.
Yeah.
About just the conversation. I think originally the reason we had it is because of the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm.
And because of these artists, these actors, these men
Mm-hmm.
being, stories or allegations, I guess, brought against them of sexual misconduct, sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and sexual harassment. And then knowing and liking
Mm-hmm.
what they, did, the acting they did, the art that they made, and having to reconcile
Mm-hmm.
with that of, okay.
The big one for me was Kevin Spacey.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I had a really hard time with that.
I think we were both kind of in denial at first.
I was. Yeah. I was sad more
Mhm.
before I was like mad about it. I was sad for several days. I was like, not Kevin Spacey. I was so sad about it.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask yourself, like, does that discredit his work? There was that whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer, but
Yeah. I mean, I think this is an interesting conversation. I mean, especially just to have between us, because, I mean, we do bring obviously two perspectives of
Mm-hmm.
A white woman and
Mm-hmm.
a white man.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have, I mean, the perspective, I guess, I would say we're both like feminist in the fact that we both obviously believe that women deserve equal rights in all ways.
Right.
So, we agree with the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even understand how you would disagree with the Me Too movement, but it just, throwing that out there that, I mean, like, we welcome the Me Too movement, but at the same time, just trying to figure out our feelings on the art left behind. Like the man, I mean, did what he did. It deserves the, punishment that, is determined in a court of law.
Absolutely.
But the art that man left behind is like, now what do I feel?
Right. And I think that, like, it's not even about, well, okay, maybe it's always like controversial, I guess. Or, controversial, but polarizing. But it's not even necessarily about, oh, what did the guy or the artist do so wrong? Like, who did they violate? What did they do? Because I am probably going to get a lot of hate about saying this out loud. I feel this way about Kanye West.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really hard time with Kanye. I don't know. I just, obviously he's some sort of genius. He's obviously wildly unpredictable and can do some stuff sometimes that is just out of left field, and like a lot of stuff that I don't really I feel, I don't even know how to explain it. I feel ugh about it. Like, I feel like, I don't know, that's not good. Like, there's something about what he does and most of the things that he tweets and whatever that I feel very, like, iffy about. And so I have a hard time, like, with his music. I don't really listen to him, and it's mostly because I don't know how I feel about him as a person. But I don't want to discredit his art, but then at the same, it's wildly confusing.
Okay,
I don't know.
My question on this one
Yeah.
is, so you're saying you don't enjoy his art because you don't enjoy the man.
I guess so.
Okay, so my kind of question in that is why, or what is different? What makes you feel differently about Kanye than like Kevin Spacey? Because you still enjoy Kevin Spacey's work,
right? Like, I loved House of Cards,
and like I'm here. Well, I guess here is my question. I want to put words in your mouth. Would you go back and watch seasons 1, 2, and 3 of House of Cards?
Probably. I mean, I don't know, but probably yes.
Okay, so just with that sentiment, like, why is Kanye separate? I
don't know. Here's the thing. I used to be a fan of Kanye. Like 808s and Heartbreak, freaking love that album. Like, I was a fan of Kanye, but then...
So you miss the old Kanye?
Yeah, I do. I miss the old Kanye. And like, I am all for... It's not about his art, because I don't think his art is any less art. Like, I think... like, I'm all for artists progressing and for doing new things and weird things and cool things and whatever. Like, all about that. But there's something about, I don't know, the way he, and maybe, see, I don't know, because I was going to say maybe it's the way he went through those couple of years of just like complete disrespect of anybody and everybody and just like did some crazy stuff, right? But like, obviously, Kevin Spacey, for example, did not do great things.
and I want to jump in here and say, did way worse things. Kanye is not even
right. He didn't abuse anybody.
He's not been accused of any sort of sexual misconduct. You were saying just Kanye is basically comes off as an ass.
Yeah,
like just and
this is very I don't know what it is about him.
I don't know, pompous, like possibly misogynistic, like I don't know, just like. But anyways, I just want to clarify there that Kanye is not even in the same category.
Oh, right.
As
yes. Oh, definitely not in the same
Kevin
category
Spacey or anything like that.
But let's, you asked if I would go back and watch House of Cards. I would go back and listen to 808s. I love that album.
Okay. So maybe the new, then I almost feel like your problem with Kanye isn't necessarily that you think he's a jackass. It's more so that you just don't like his new music and you think he's a jackass.
No, it's not that.
Because what if he was
It's not his music. I'm turned off of his art because of him.
But what if he was still making 808s and Heartbreak?
I'm turned off of his art because of him. Okay. I have not listened to his new stuff, obviously, because I just can't get behind Kanye right now. But every single person I know freaking loves Kanye, and that's fine. You're allowed to. I would venture to guess his new stuff is just as like interesting, if not, I don't know what word to use, but like, let's just say is as I mean, I've heard a few of his newer songs and I like what I've heard. I'm not interested in listening to Kanye. I'm turned off of his art because of him. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, like your aversion, I guess, to Kanye is not what baffles me or, that I'm questioning.
Right.
It's more so, what is the difference?
Right.
Because you're turned off of Kanye because of the man, but you are not turned off of, okay, so let's pick somebody else, because since we already said Kevin Spacey, like, okay, so Steve Jobs.
Right.
I would say that both of us, especially me, like hold Steve Jobs in like an inspiration, a hero type category. Yet, Steve Jobs was never known
Yeah, he was notoriously a bad person.
Yeah. To be, you know, a nice guy.
Right.
Like, he would fit into the Kanye category of a jackass.
Right, like he didn't treat his family well.
Yeah. I mean, he came around in the end to be more of a family man, but like his legacy that he left, you know, besides the product, like leaving Apple aside, the legacy of the man he was on a personal level is not great. It's very tarnished.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you obviously enjoy Apple products.
Obviously.
You obviously enjoy not even the product of the man, but the words of the man.
Right. He was a genius. He revolutionized our entire world, and he had really great things to say about it. That's just the truth. But he obviously wasn't a family man. Like he wasn't like you said, his legacy is tarnished in that aspect. I don't know. I think that's just the question we're asking, though, right? We're asking, like, can you accept the art, but not the artist? Because it's an argument that a lot of people use. Like, another good example is Chris Brown. Like, after the whole Rihanna situation, like, everyone was talking about, like, you need to leave Chris Brown, don't listen to his music, you know, all this stuff because of what it represents. But the question is, which I have, I'm not trying to get in any fights here. Like, I have no preference on if you listen to Chris Brown or not. Like, I don't know.
Unless you say that you like good music, then you probably shouldn't listen to Chris Brown.
Right.
But if you just say, I don't care what I listen to, I just listen to things, then there's no fight there.
Yeah. And so, but a lot of people argued, like, if you support his music, you're supporting an abuser, you know? And I just think that's an interesting question because in a way you're paying him. You know, he's getting paid for however many streams he has or, you know, whatever it is. Like if you go see a Kevin Spacey movie, then you're paying
because
his salary.
He's still like, because like Kevin Spacey is still going to get residuals from movies.
Things. Yeah.
Like even though he may not be booked for any future gig, he could still make millions and millions of dollars from his past work if people watch it.
Yeah. So in a way you are supporting that, I guess. But I think the question is maybe not can you support the art but not the artist. But I think, you know, it's not necessarily about like can you separate the art from the artist, but what is the artist's responsibility in the art? Maybe, I don't know, because you're still supporting the artist if you support their art, and if they're a terrible person, you're supporting a terrible person. So I don't know, but can you still appreciate the art that they create, even though, I mean, not every single person is going to be like this wildly healthy, extremely civil, whatever word you want to use. They're not going to be this like nice person, right? And definitely not 100% of the time. Like everybody has problems. It just depends on what yours is. So is that okay?
I feel like this statement that I'm going to make is multifaceted because I understand there is this side of it of, you know, abusers and Me Too, you know, guys. But I'm going to paint this with a broad brush of just, you know, boycotting and all that type of stuff. It's if you boycott everything that you disagree with, then you boycott everything because there is not one other person or one other corporation or one other piece of art in this entire world that agrees with you 100%. Right. So you might as well go live in a cave by yourself with only mirrors because you may not even agree with the rock wall, like at some point. Yeah. You know, it's so if you live your life only participating and, you know, I guess, not supporting, but only purchasing or listening to or enjoying anything from people that, you know, you agree with, then you can't enjoy anything. Right. I mean, we are married. We've been married for almost 10 years now. We spend all of our waking hours with each other, and yet there is not only a few things, there are tons of things that we do not agree on.
Right.
Like, there's no way that two human beings could possibly agree 100%. So if you are going to boycott, you might as well boycott everything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think we were having this conversation earlier with one of our friends about this type of thing, like with the Chick-fil-A, you know, scandal or whatever a few years ago. There are some groups that are like very much outraged and against the actions of the CEO of Chick-fil-A. And then there are some groups that I would put myself in. It's like, I mean, I don't agree with all of this person's views.
But they make delicious
fries. I don't care. Like, and then there's other people who agree with the views. But more so, I'm going to stick with my view. Like, I guess give my perspective of, I don't care. Like, because I am a consumer and I'm going to basically eat what I like and purchase what I like to a certain point, as long as, you know, actually, I think that is even, so as I was speaking, something went through my mind of, I say that, yet I don't purchase from certain companies because I don't want to support certain things.
Right.
Like I have not shopped at Walmart in forever because I don't really like, you know, what Walmart does. I don't like their business practices and basically the way they treat their employees. But I guess the way that I look at that is, there is a difference between, or maybe there's not. Maybe you can, you know, question me on this. My views would be, there's a difference between directly contributing to, you know, shopping at a place where my shopping is contributing to the mistreatment of the employees of that organization, versus shopping at a place that has very good, like, you know, that people love working at Chick-fil-A, and they obviously have great, like, product
and customer
service, and like they have a mission of love. Obviously, there's the other side of that you know, you could say, well, I mean, not all of, but you know, they do, like, they show
as a business,
not what the you know, the person at the head, but the business itself has portrayed itself as something that is, you know, cares about people.
Right.
And I feel like that was a very clumsy way of getting to what I'm saying, but, you know, I don't know, I just feel like there's a difference between the views of a person who may be in charge or may, like, represent, I guess, like, the company, and what the company is actually doing.
Okay, but so if we take that, the views of the person, of the artist, and their direct art, what do you think? Because taking business out of it, taking the company out of it, it is an artist and their direct product is their art. You know, it's the thing they support, the thing they believe in, the thing they feel, whatever. So, you know what I mean? So if you don't support them as a person, can you not support their art?
So I would look at it this way. Supporting them as a person, it, you know, would be like purchasing something that they make contributes to their livelihood. If I purchase said thing and their livelihood is doing harm to others, that's whenever I would, you know, basically cross the line, or, I mean,
that's when it gets gray.
Not even gray. That's where I would stop. Like, I will not contribute to furthering this person's whatever.
So we can't ever watch Kevin Spacey again, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that, because Kevin Spacey is not actively, I guess, isn't like actively. He is no longer abusing people.
Right.
So if I watch like
right,
season
because
one
then
of
you
House
have
of
to
Cards,
ask like where the process of redemption, like can people come back from?
right.
Which I believe they can.
Yeah, I believe all people can change.
Yeah.
And I also believe in forgiveness, and I believe that if
I believe in justice too. Just you know, let's throw that out there.
Well, yes, I believe in justice and that, but I also believe in redemption.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you think that you can like support the art but not the artist?
I don't know. I mean, I think I entered into this conversation thinking that absolutely.
Yeah.
You can okay, not I think that you can like art and not like the artist.
Absolutely. I can appreciate art. I mean, art is art regardless of who created it. Like art is subjective. Every piece of art is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that appreciating art and liking art, whatever, like, okay, fine. Like, I mean, it's subjective. That's the whole point of art. But I think that's different. To me, that's different than supporting.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, because I think where I get tied up in that conversation and in the question
mm-hmm.
is the word support, because I don't support because I guess that word means different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess by buying fries at Chick-fil-A, I'm technically supporting them.
Right.
But I'm not like in support of Chick-fil-A. Like,
right. I do think it gets a little messy,
mm-hmm.
obviously. And like also kind of just a little too much sometimes. Like you can't be mad at everything, and it's just impossible to live your life that way.
Mm-hmm.
To be like so concerned about every minute detail that like it's just impossible.
Yeah. I think everything is so multifaceted and so nuanced. Like that's why I guess stumbling like in my words, like through talking, because I'm having so many conflicting thoughts of like, well, if I think that about Chick-fil-A, then why do I think that about, Kanye, or why do I think that about, whatever? Yeah. And I agree with what you're saying right there, is like, you can't live your life that way. Like what I was saying earlier, if you are going to boycott, then you ultimately have to boycott everything, and you have to live off your own land.
Right. Right. Which I am not interested in doing.
Right.
But where I keep getting, I guess, like tripped up in my head in this conversation is like supporting, support like past artists versus present artists. Mm-hmm. Like it's really easy for me to accept art that's been around forever. And like I never was alive when the artist was alive. And so like it feels kind of removed for me. Not that I think that every artist, I still think that they could have been a very terrible person and have created amazing art. Mm-hmm. But like,
yeah, because you liking it is not financially supporting it.
Right.
And liking it, even if you somehow were financially supporting it,
right,
doesn't contribute to that person's livelihood because they're dead.
Right. It's going to some sort of trust or whatever, museum. I don't know. Wherever money goes to.
Yeah.
But like a present artist, it feels more like I'm watching it play out. And so like it's more relevant to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's where I get tripped up.
Yeah. And I think that conversation is why we decided to even have this podcast.
Yeah. I think you know what a good example. So let's talk about, Picasso.
Sex, baby.
We'll talk about Picasso. Mm-hmm. So part of the reason we decided to have this conversation is we watched this special on Netflix called Nanette by Hannah Gadsby, and it's amazing. She's a stand-up comic. Comic?
Yeah. Comedian.
Yeah, okay. I was like, is that right? And it was absolutely brilliant. I wouldn't, you should just watch it regardless. Yeah. But I wouldn't say it's like funny.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's like real and needed, and
I
think it brings a really interesting perspective to comedy that not a lot of people talk about.
I didn't leave it thinking like, "Holy cow, that was absolutely amazing," but I left it thinking.
Yes, there's a lot of questions that she brings up that I think are very valid. Yeah. So it's absolutely amazing. But in that stand-up, she talks about Picasso, and she talks about like he was a terrible person. He treated women awful. He, slept with an underage girl when he was married, and Just kind of like thought of women as objects, very much so, obviously. But he also introduced a very new way of painting.
Right. A new way of thinking about art.
A new way of thinking about art. And Hannah was saying in her bit that, take or separate the art from the artist.
Yeah, people tell me.
Yeah, people say you should do this, and like you can accept the art but not the artist and whatever. And she was like, okay, let's give it a go. Nobody is buying, what did she say? Geometric doodles at an auction. They're buying an effing Picasso. The name means something.
Right. She's like, okay, yeah, like if we're gonna do this, then we can strip Picasso off of his paintings and still be able to sell them for millions of dollars.
But you
can't.
It's
because
just geometric doodles.
Yeah. You're buying a Picasso. You're not buying a painting. Right.
And it's a true point.
Yeah. And at that point, whenever I heard it, I was like, that actually made me think, because I would have been in this, I've been thinking about this a lot, of just separating the artist, because I can enjoy the art and not agree with the artist. And her like point on that of just like, well, separate the two. And it's like, but then to counter Hannah's point, I feel like that is separating Picasso the artist from Picasso the man.
I do think that's a fair point, because obviously he was revolutionary in art and in painting and what he created. And I mean, he changed the whole game, which deserves its recognition. But I still think the fact remains that you can't separate him from his art. Like, there is a reason that people want it. It's because it's Picasso.
Yeah, but it's not because of Picasso the man, though. It's just because Picasso changed the game, and it's because Picasso is world-renowned artist that brings social value to the space of art and art collectors. Right. So the paintings of Picasso changed the way we think about art, which changed art as a whole from everybody who ever painted after Picasso. And because of that, he is a like pendulum shift in the art world, which makes his work so valuable because it's such a big name, I guess. Like it holds so much weight and so much social value among that group. I feel like the reason anything, like a piece of art would sell, for $3 million, whatever a Picasso would sell for, is not because the person really, really likes the painting. Like Hannah was saying, it's because they want the social value
of a Picasso,
of owning a Picasso. Yeah, like I own a Picasso.
Right.
Versus like, I mean, I've never been that wealthy, so I can't, ever even be in that mindset.
Yeah.
But I understand, like, art is a good thing to put your money into, like, taxes, whatever. But just taking all that aside, the way my mentality is, I just don't feel like I would ever care to spend that much money on an original, like, painting, like, just because of the name attached to it. I would just want, like, if I like the painting, I can just buy a reproduction of it because I just like looking at it. Like, but I don't know. I don't know if that really goes into this conversation.
Yeah, I don't think it is. But while we're at it, I would totally buy an original Van Gogh. Just throwing it out there.
But do you support Van Gogh the man and everything that Van Gogh ever stood for?
As far as I know, he didn't do anything like that, like Picasso, so it's fine. But let's just be honest here and say if I had the chance to own a Picasso, I would.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we can't deny that. Regardless of if he was an asshole or not. Like, it's just the truth.
Right.
But that, I think, is the point, is I can do that because, like, I don't know, it's different for me. Like, I can just, like, I don't know what it is, but I can look at that and say, like, well, yeah, he was a douche, but also, like, it's a Picasso. Whereas, like, artists, like, more current artists, actually, there's one that I really loved and supported, that his name is Dallas Clayton, and he got caught up in the Me Too movement, and somebody accused him of some sort of harassment or abuse. I'm not even really sure, but there wasn't like a lot of information online about it. It kind of like came out, and then he just like turned off everything on his socials, like all comments and whatever, turned off everything and hasn't been back since. So I don't actually know, like, I mean, that kind of doesn't look great for you. Like, you know, he literally, the day that the article came out, he just like disappeared. So I don't know what that means, but I question now, like I haven't posted any of his like really adorable, cute painting quote things. I haven't, you know, I have 2 of his books. I haven't opened them. Like I don't really know how I should, I don't know what I'm allowed to do. And you know, you're allowed to do whatever you want, but I mean, I do feel like conflicted about it. Like I feel conflicted because mostly probably because of what he promoted. He promoted very like happy, good, like you are enough kind of things, you know? So like that with the like, it was just like such an oxymoron to be like a promoter of like humanity and then like kind of be accused of like a really awful act against humanity, you know? So like it's conflicting and I feel conflicted by it. But he's like an artist, a painter who like I supported, and I don't know how I feel about him now. But like Picasso, even though I know he was like a terrible human being or whatever, like I can look at his art. I love looking at his art. I love whenever I pass a Picasso in the museum and I'm like, Picasso, you know, like I can separate that somehow. But I think it's because I didn't live when Picasso was around and I didn't have to.
And to put that into perspective,
question it.
One of the things that Hannah said, you know, that Picasso said, a quote from Picasso is that he should, he said, I should burn every woman that I have sex with.
Like once I'm done with her.
Because.
Burn a woman and you burn the past she represents.
Yes. And it's like, if anybody said anywhere close to that,
they would not be alive.
You know, today, you know. I have another question on that, but I think this is a good time to take a break and let you know about our sponsor, BetterHelp.com/Jensen.
Yes, if you don't know, BetterHelp.com is an affordable, private online counseling service, and they have unlimited access to licensed therapists. So it's super cool. It's really simple. That like to sign up, all you have to do is like go on their website, BetterHelp.com/Jensen, fill out the questionnaire. You get paired with a licensed therapist immediately, and you can begin counseling in like as quick as that day, which is super awesome. The thing that I really love about it is face-to-face counseling typically can cost anywhere from like $150 to $250 per session, but BetterHelp can be as affordable as $35 a week, which is just amazing. And you get unlimited access to your counselor. So if you're just having like a really bad day, they're there for you, which is amazing. You have to be 18 or older to use the service. And just a reminder, it is a counseling service, not a crisis line.
So if you want to check it out, you can go to BetterHelp.com/Jensen. And I really love partnering with BetterHelp just to further destigmatize counseling.
Yeah, I'm a huge supporter of counseling.
Yes, because it is invaluable.
Saved my life, truthfully.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's just invaluable to talk to somebody that's impartial and trained to be able to like hear what you have to say and give you wise advice.
Yeah.
So back to the conversation of Picasso. Picasso said these heinous things.
Right.
So one question I have on that, and I don't know what I feel either way. I just have this question of, should we retroactively apply the opinions and enlightenment, I guess, of the modern era to the people of past times?
Right. I do think that's a valid question because obviously times were different, right? But as a girl, I'm going to say yes. Because it's hard, because I do appreciate that, you know, life was different and views were different and distribution of power was different. It was very much a white, straight male's world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it doesn't really matter because there are stories spread or sprinkled throughout history of women who have just like stood up and like completely changed the game and like refused to be walked on. And I think also like it's hard for me. This is just a personal opinion here. I don't know, like
this whole podcast is a personal opinion.
True. But I mean, it's hard for me to really, I guess, kind of comprehend how a person can look at another person and think like you are not worthy and you don't belong next to me. Mm-hmm. I think that's wild. It's hard for me to comprehend that. So I think that's why I say yes, obviously, because they should have known. Like every culture, every gender, every species, everything should just know that like we are all equal. And it's wild to me that somebody who is a man can look at a woman and say, you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You are stupid. You belong in the kitchen, whatever it is. Like they literally thought we had no brains. Like that's wild to me. I can't understand that. So from that perspective, I say, yes, we should retroactively. But I do appreciate the times and like the technology available and the like the progression of things. Mm-hmm. I get it.
Counter is not really the word I want to say because I'm not saying that I'm I'm not like
devil's advocate.
Yeah, I'm not defending the thought of the past. Right. But what I want to say is you are coming to that opinion with the new perspective, because even women at that time would, not all women, right, and not all men back then either, but it just the general consensus, the general time, like even women believed that women were lesser,
that they belonged at home,
right? And maybe lesser isn't even like the right word, but you know, basically both genders like believed in in the traditional, you know, values of like the woman had her place, the man had his place, and they operated within those, thinking that that is where they were supposed to be, and that stepping outside that was disrespectful to, you know, and obviously men were still like the superior being, you know, but it's like women believed that as well.
Right.
I mean, you know, certain women would believe that in that time. And so it's like, and that is not because, it's because that is what it was nurtured. That's like what was taught to, you know, each of those generations. And obviously each generation became a little bit different and a little bit, you know, progressed and progressed to the point that we are today. And we're not far removed even.
I was going to say,
I don't even know if we are removed yet.
You could apply that today because 53% of white females voted for Trump. And that blows my mind. Right. You know, I can't understand how a girl would ever vote for him. Like, and that's just a personal, like if you did, fine, like whatever. I just, coming from, you know, my perspective, I don't get it.
Yeah. Because that even comes into the same conversation of separating the man from the work.
Right.
You know,
and that's what a lot of people have told me. Well, not a lot. That's
right. But like, it's like there are, you know, 53% of women were able to, I guess, like separate the words and actions of a disgusting man.
Right. Like I don't have to believe. I don't have to support his words, but I support what he stands for as far as like the policies or whatever.
Yeah. Or I guess that some, you know, maybe even came at it as I don't support the man at all, but I even less support the other option.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I don't know, but anyways, but I agree with what you're saying though, that like it is a little baffling to like think about that a woman could hear a man say vile things about her, because when he speaks, he's speaking about women. So it's about her.
Like, you don't like point any one woman out. You talk about the whole gender. Right. you
it's
know?
Like speaking about women.
Yeah.
Can hear that and then like set it aside and say, well.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it baffles me. I don't get it.
So.
But I do think, I do think you have to appreciate like the times you were in, I guess, but I don't think it changes the fact that some primarily men in the past, because it's always been a man's world, right? Like they dominate.
It's an abuse of power,
right? Like, I don't want to come off like I'm just hating men, because that's not true. But the truth is that men have dominated history. It's all abuse of power, and throughout history, men have been the ones who have wielded the power. Right. So I think that it's still like looking at Picasso, like in particular, like I still think it's fair to say like he should have known better than to be misogynist and than to say these things about these girls, or to even like approach underage girls like that shouldn't have been a thing. Like even back then, like it was what, in the 20s, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would because the underage girl was 17. Yeah. And I don't feel that it... Yeah, but he was 42 and married. Okay, yeah, that is whatever. Like, you know... Yeah. That is what it is. Yeah. But to say that he approached a 17-year-old in the 20s, you know? Yeah. It's like, it's barely taboo to approach a 17-year-old now. Like, it's not even taboo, it's just illegal. Like if you... I mean, that's true. A 43-year-old man, like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just... That... It's separate, but let's just say you and I, we are 1 year apart. You know, it's that's like different. You know, if like I was 18 and you were 17, well, we were at one point 17 and 18. That's and different. Like, but like, yeah, I know, but like in my head, 42 and 17 is so different than like a few years apart. He could have been her father. No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Separate, like, not talking about the Picasso situation right now, but like, because you're applying the grossness of a 42-year-old man being with anybody that young. Yeah, that's a really big age gap. Yes. Very big is an understatement. Yeah. But I'm saying like to be up in arms about him approaching an underage girl who's 17 in the 20s, like I just feel like I just feel like that is not looking at it through the lens of the time. That is looking at it through the lens of your life. No, I just think it shows his character that he was 42 and married and approached, or I don't even know if he approached, but willingly and knowingly had an affair with a 17-year-old girl. Right. I think that shows his character. Yeah. Regardless, even if she was 21. Right. And he was like, 43 and married and approaching like this, young woman. Yeah, but if you're looking at like present day artists, let's say, sexual scandals aside, whatever, like if they're just like I don't know, I think I just go back and forth every single time because I was about to ask a question and then I changed my own mind. Because I was about to say like, if they're just a controversial character or whatever, but then I love the fact that art is controversial. That's the whole point. Right. It asks questions. It challenges things. And you can only do that if the artist is willing to challenge it. So, I don't know. Maybe it's okay. But maybe it's subjective. Yeah. Maybe it, like art, is subjective. Yeah. And I think, like you said, like, art at the end of the day, when it's really doing its job, it's challenging somebody. Yeah. Well, isn't that the quote is, I think it's about art. It says art challenges the disturbed and challenges the comfortable. Well, wait. We've actually mentioned this quote on the podcast, I think twice now, but disturbs the comfortable and comforts the disturbed. Right. That's what it says. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what good art like does. Yeah. It comforts the disturbed and disturbs the comfortable. Yeah. And not only art, but I think, well, I guess you could say it's a form of art, but even in protesting or like in standing up for something that is right. So I think a perfect example of this is the Colin Kaepernick, like, NFL football player who... Oh, the kneeling. Chose to bring light to the social injustice in a very civil way against the Black community in America, with police brutality. Right. And he chose to express himself in a way that
very much so disturbed the comfortable, and still does.
Still does.
That's like, I think, why it was so perfect and why it was so good, and like, you know,
powerful,
and very respectful, like, because he started it with you know, just sitting down. Then he talked to somebody who was a actual, you know, veteran, and said, hey, like, if you want to protest, it would actually be a good way to protest this would be to kneel, because kneeling is a sign of respect, and you would, you know, portray your message. And so he did that. But still, because of the group of people who are watching an NFL game and don't want to be presented with the social injustices of the world that they are trying to ignore, it very much disturbs them, and it gets them up in arms, and then they make the entire scenario about something else so that they can make themselves feel better.
Right.
Because now that it's about the anthem and not about racism, they can throw him out and say, no, you cannot disrespect my country. It's like, well, he is an American, and you're disrespecting him, and you're disrespecting
freedom,
an entire community in this country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that, like, good art, good activism, good, like, you know, whatever it is, I just love that visual image of like, those disturbs the comfortable but comforts the disturbed. Like, I really like it.
But then that still doesn't necessarily answer if you can separate the art from the artist. Or maybe it does. Maybe you can't. Maybe you can't.
I mean, I honestly don't know, because I think some people can, some people can't. Like, I think that's the thing, is that, and there are some instances where you can, some instances where I can, because we all have these triggers, and we all have, you know, our things.
Right.
You know, there are some things that you see that you're like, that really bothers me. You know, basically that offends me.
Yeah.
And I look at it, I'm like, why would you be offended by that?
Yeah.
But then there are things that maybe I see that I'm like, how could you possibly, you know, X, Y, Z? And you're like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
You know?
Like,
and so,
obviously they can, because...
Right. I think just like with this podcast is about asking the questions. And I think these are questions that are only answered as individuals.
Right.
Because I think there are some of us who can separate the art from the artist. And there are, I think, even more so, certain instances in each one of us where sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. It depends on what it is and you know, how it was. So I had another question, though.
Yeah.
I don't, again, this is just asking a question. Do you think there should be a statute of limitations on the outrage of somebody's wrongdoing? Specifically, like, let's say with Me Too. So, so whenever the Kevin Spacey thing came out, and, you know, the initial news was just the very, very first instance that was like...
And it was only that for days.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like
30 years ago.
30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
That this, you know, situation had happened. And you know, when I heard the news, I only knew about that one.
Right.
And I didn't know anything else.
Right. And
in that moment, I remember feeling like, well, I mean, it was 30 years ago. Like, it wasn't, you know, whatever. Like, I was just, I remember having the feelings of, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
Like, why would we, like, not allow somebody to reconcile, but also change? And like, I understand there's a legal statute of limitations, but is there, should there be a statute of limitations of outrage and like, I don't know,
how much do we punish a person for something they did
socially?
Yeah. I feel like we talked about this a little bit in a past episode it was about redemption and grace. But we talked about these, like, up and coming actors who are, like, working on these movies or whatever, and then, like, a Twitter video from when they were like 12 comes out, and then it, like, completely ruins their opportunity, and they're, like, shunned from the internet, cast out of the movie, you know, all these things. I don't feel like that's fair. I feel like, you know, you're young and stupid for a long time, a lot of your life. And not that equates, like, sexual abuse by any means. Right. But I do think, you know, like, there is that, it happens, like, without, like, any sort of abuse. Like, it happens just because somebody, like, said something offensive when they were 12, and now we all live on the internet, so you can't get away from it, you know? I don't think that's fair. I think that I think it should be obvious that people change from the time they're young and stupid till they're an adult. I think that's crazy. But as far as like Kevin Spacey specifically, I remember, gosh, I hate saying, well, I don't hate saying this. I'm nervous to say it because I don't want anybody to think that I don't agree with the Me Too movement, because that's not true. I remember when the very first story came out, that he abused a kid who was in the same play as him or something. But it was like 30 years ago at a after party at his house or whatever. And there was like a lot of drinking and a lot of whatever. But the kid was, he was 14. So like my initial, I guess I would say like defense, because I really didn't want to believe it about Kevin Spacey. I was really sad about it. My initial defense was like, well, are we not going to talk about why a 14-year-old was partying? But that doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter, but that was my original thought. And then my next thought was, okay, what if it was 30 years ago? Like, then what? Like, and again, for several, I think it was like two or 3 days maybe, like there weren't any other stories that came out. And Kevin Spacey released a statement saying like, I don't remember this at all, but if I did anything, then I feel like, or like I apologize, like I never meant to, you know, whatever. And he's the only one at that time, like when all of that stuff, all the people were coming out, he's the only one who had released like an apology statement. And I thought that showed character. Again, I understand there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we will never see. Like, it could have been a PR move. I don't know. But initially I was like, that shows character, I think. Saying like, I don't remember it, but if I did something, sorry, you know? And I remember thinking that. And then I remember thinking like, what? It's 30 years. Like, again, there's a legal limitation. I get that. But like, immediately Netflix dropped him. Immediately. Before they had even investigated anything, before any of the other stories came out, his agency dropped him, Netflix dropped him, like everyone, because again, we're living in a time where you have to cover your own, you know, and like you have to make sure you're safe and you're not attached to this name, right? Yeah. But like it could have, again, I understand it wasn't, but it could have been a lie. Like it could have been a made up story. And then everyone was just like, Kevin Spacey's awful. Let's just drop him. You don't know that. And so like, that was really kind of like where I came from. I was like, I totally am in support of like coming out and like telling your stories and like accusing somebody who did. The accuser is always, I think, should be assumed correct until investigated. Like, I think that you shouldn't assume that they're lying, you know? But I also don't believe in burning someone at the stake before we know the truth. So yeah, I don't know where I fall on that.
Yeah, because there's always, I mean, I was going to say like, because there's always like two sides to a story. Yeah. But that doesn't diminish one side's truth.
Not at all. Not at all. And I actually think a really good example, and again, I don't think any of us really know the truth about any of these stories, but a good example of that was James Franco and the accusations that came against him. And he went on, I think it was Stephen Colbert, the night after that happened. And Stephen Colbert asked him about it. And James Franco had a really good response, I thought. He said, like, you know, like, I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but I'm not here to diminish her truth. I'm not here to diminish her story. I think that everyone should be able to speak what they feel happened, what they feel is truth. And, you know, I'm not here to pretend like she doesn't feel that way. And I think that was brilliant to me. Again, could have been a PR move. I don't know, but it was brilliant. Yeah. And I think that's what we're saying, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not by any means going to diminish anybody's story and anybody's truth and anybody's what happened to them. I think that it is valid and it is real and it should be talked about. I also don't believe in burning people at the stake, though. Like, I don't believe in just assuming that somebody comes out with a story and now we have to just completely ruin somebody's entire life. Like, I don't believe in that either. I think that there's, I don't know, a middle ground somewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the same with art. Maybe there's a middle ground somewhere, and like, just because the artist can be someone who doesn't mesh well with you,
right,
doesn't mean that they can't create art that is relevant to you.
So this is a question I had about, like, with what you're saying and with, like, Dallas Clayton specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Does the actions of the artist, so does the actions of Dallas diminish the message that he was portraying, like, was putting out there? Like, if you were walking down the street, what was one of his, like, sayings, like, that you would see?
Think about somebody you love.
Yeah.
So, and, like, things like that.
So, think about somebody you love. Yeah. If you were walking down the street and you saw this painting that said, think about someone you love, it made you think about someone you love, and then it caused something to stir inside of you.
I would love it. I would take a photo of it.
It did its job, its message.
Right.
Does the actions of the artist now, does it diminish the actual message of the art, or does the art stand alone from the artist?
I don't know, because again, I'm really conflicted by him now. Like, I'm conflicted by the things that he's put out. I'm questioning if he even thought them. And I don't think that he didn't. I think that he did. I think you can only create art that you believe in, right? So I think he believed it. I think he wanted to spread a positive message. But there's something in me that's like, well, all of that is useless now. Like, all of it is void. I don't know.
Okay. Again, I question, why do you feel that way, but don't feel that way about Kevin Spacey's past work?
Why it's not void?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's void or not. I haven't really thought about whether I would go back and watch something.
I mean, I guess...
But
I guess it's because the art is different, because Kevin Spacey is an actor in something that Aaron Sorkin wrote.
Right.
And, like,
I was going to say that
he is portraying a character in a story that is that you really like.
Yeah.
Versus art is like wearing your heart on your sleeve.
Right.
And it's like taking who you are and putting it on something.
Right.
And so I guess I could see where you would, like, be conflicted in that way.
Yeah, I do think that it's messy and confusing, and I think maybe even, like, more so in, like, today, it's not just like the art, but it's literally everything about the artist. Like I guess kind of what you were saying, can you separate the artist from the man? I think that's the question we have to ask, because we're all, like, we all have things that, like, we'd rather not anybody know about, and like things we're not proud of, or like whatever insecurities, whatever thoughts that we prefer to stay in our head. Like, but does that make what we can create less than? I don't think so.
So I want to kind of tell a story and get back to different people's perspectives on the same thing regarding our first few years of marriage. But before we get into that, want to remind you that our podcast is also sponsored by our new merch, which you can check out at shop.codyjensen.com. If you're watching this right now, I'm actually wearing one of the shirts currently. It says Deeply Curious, which I wrote and then put it on a shirt.
Yeah, you can own Cody's handwriting.
You can own it. It'll be yours. The art. You can own my art. So
just make sure you like him as a person.
Right. Can you separate the art from the artist? Again, you can check out our merch by going to shop.codyjensen.com. Okay, so I was thinking earlier, it just came back around to my brain. I was thinking earlier when we were talking about just people, talking about other people's truth. And one of the reasons that, one of the life experiences that I have gone through that makes me, I guess, empathize with stories that I hear of, somebody saying, like, this happened, and then the other person saying, like, wait, what? That is not what I thought happened, like, at all.
Yeah.
And, like, you from the outside, you know, you may hear a story, let's say, you know, sticking with the hot button of Me Too.
We're just burying ourselves here.
And, you know, somebody accuses, you know, like he was like, I don't know, like, you know, coming on to me and like, you know, like go ahead.
Well, I would say a really good example, I think, is Justin Trudeau. Is that the Canada Prime Minister?
Right.
That happened to him. Mm-hmm. Like a woman came out recently and said like 20 years ago or something, he like touched her boob or something. And
I don't even think I don't think she specifically said.
Oh, well, anyway, she did not appreciate, he like came on to her of some sort, whatever. Anyway, he was like, I don't recall at all. Like, I think whatever, he had a statement that was whatever good, but then he, at the end of it, he said like, but I do appreciate that my experience can be completely different than what somebody else is experiencing in the same moment. It can be completely different. Yeah. So
just, I guess, in those situations, I feel like if you've never experienced this, you can look at that and be like, and not really empathize, be able to see it from that perspective. And you just like, how could you not see it that way? Like that you're doing, you know, something. And so for us, like a personal story, let's get real. Like our first, I don't know, was it 2 years of marriage? Like from my perspective, I thought was great. Like I didn't think we really had like hardly any issues. Like we, like, you know, we obviously had regular like marriage, like, you know,
like
arguments.
fight,
like,
Like
I mean, you live together. It's like there's just things, you have bad days, things annoy you, you know, whatever. But I mean, generally though, like we didn't have like screaming matches or like anything like that. It was all very like civil to me. Like at the, you know, 1 year anniversary, like if somebody would have like asked me, you know, how your first year of marriage, I hear that's hard. I'd have been like, no, like it was surprisingly easy. Like it was so amazing. Same thing with second year. I would have said second year was a little more difficult than first year. But I mean, ultimately though, like we have like a really good marriage, like, and I feel like really good about this.
Yeah.
That would have been my perspective.
Yeah.
And then speaking of BetterHelp and speaking of counseling, we like, well, I don't know, what was that, like year 5 or something? We went to, you know, we hired a marriage counselor, you know, so we could like continue a path to health and like, you know, growth and like become, you know, healthier people and work out any sort of like issues and things like that. And through that experience, I learned Sarah's perspective, Sarah's true perspective in that. And I cannot even begin to express in words how, I mean, mind blown emoji would be the exact, like the express, like boom, like my, I was just like, what?
Yeah. I felt like I was drowning. Yeah. It was like the worst. And not necessarily, I mean, I do think like we obviously didn't know how to communicate. Like we were 18. Like we had no idea what we were doing. So like that was an issue, obviously, which I think turns into other issues. Like if you can't communicate, then everything breaks down, right? But it was maybe it had to do with communication now that I'm thinking about it. I don't know. Anyway, it was like more of like, I guess the expectations that just like threw me off a bridge. Like I was drowning. I hated it. I hated it. And for a lot of years. Not that I hated, I know that sounds bad, but like I didn't hate you. But I think that like what I didn't want to be married, but not because of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because not to say that it wasn't my fault, because it was absolutely in part like my fault for putting things on you, you know,
right? Just like it was my fault for not communicating what I expected either. Like,
yeah, but then it was also just we weren't, you know, ultimately we were not properly equipped to be married, because we were 18 and 19. I mean, that's like there's
Yeah. You think this is fairy tale romance. It was not.
Yeah. Like there's step one, like you're 18 and 19. Like I don't think any 18 or 19 year old is actually going to be fully properly equipped to be married. But then 2, we were so compatible and so in love at that time. we are, but anyways, at that, it's like.
We were compatible out of the test you take for premarital counseling. 9 out of 11, we were like high compatibility, which is unheard of. Like that's insane. And so people were like, oh, you're good.
Yeah, you're amazing. And like the 2 things that we like scored or lower in were sexual expectations and conflict resolution. And they were like, well, I mean, that's to be expected. I mean, we've never had sex before.
Right.
And you're young. And well, I mean, not even being young, like conflict resolution and communication is like the number one, like growth opportunity for every relationship.
Nobody's ever compatible in that.
Yeah. But that aside, essentially we were looked at as like this dream couple.
Right.
And so instead of people asking us hard questions and challenging us in giving us growth opportunities and, ways that we can improve and communicate and all this type of stuff, we were basically just like, y'all are awesome. Get married.
Go right ahead.
And so, we did, and we absolutely, I mean, I don't regret it at all.
Right.
And would you like to
put
in there that you don't regret it?
I said right.
Well, you said right. You don't regret
it. Yeah.
Anyways.
Point is that same situation, same experience, completely different.
Right. I mean, I came away from our first 2 years of marriage thinking we had this in the bag.
And like, I came away like crying.
And crying literally.
Literally.
Just not in front of me.
Yeah. But again, that's like the expectations thing. People just put a lot of expectations on a girl when she gets married. And like, I was so not about that. And like a really thing that I struggled with for a long time. And like this wasn't you at all, but it was outside expectations. Everyone called me, "Oh, you're Cody's wife." Like, no, my name is Sarah. Thank you very much. Don't call me Cody's wife, Sarah. I'm Sarah. And I understand that that's just like the society that we live in or whatever it is, but it bothered me. Like it like messed with because I'm a person whose identity is like, especially back then, but like if you've listened to our podcast, the Enneagram type, I struggle to keep an identity, and everyone was calling me a wife, and everyone was calling me like these things that I had never identified with before. And I still didn't identify with, I still don't identify with. I would say I am like the least wifey wife on the planet. I very much don't care about like the wife duties. Like,
right.
Not at all. And so like everyone was calling me Cody's wife, and I lost like who I was in that, Right.
Sarah was lost in being caught up in Cody's wife.
Right. And so there was all of that. And then like literally the expectations of like, oh, you have to like clean the house and whatever, which I still don't do. And like I talked to so many people, I exaggerate all the time. I talked to like 2 people. And I asked them, I was like, how do you keep up with a full-time job, and how do you clean the house, and how do you cook, and how do you do it with a smile on your face? Like, I really don't understand, And somebody told me one time, they're like, well, it makes my husband happy, so I do it. And I just remember that face. Yes. I remember going, what? That's not what I signed up for. Like I didn't sign up to like make my husband happy. Not that I don't want to make him happy, but I don't want to be obligated to make him happy. And I don't want to, which I know like marriage, like I understand what marriage is, but like also it's just not me. Like it's not who I am. I am not a person who sits around and like cleans and cooks because I know it'll make you happy. Like that's not it at all. We will share all responsibilities. But for the first several years, that wasn't an option. Like nobody was saying like, well, you don't have to do all the cooking and cleaning. You don't have to whatever. Like he can take care of himself. Like, that's not what anybody was telling me.
Right.
And so, like, who I was got completely lost. And that was the worst. That was the thing that, like, I tear up still because I remember how it felt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awful. It was awful. I hated it. But I didn't know how to say any of it until we went to counseling. And then, like, because I went on my own for a while and, like, talked all of this stuff out and actually realized that it wasn't you I was resentful at, even though, like, I do think, like, we had miscommunications and, like, we had our own issues that we had to work through. But I thought, like, I resented you, but, like, you're not the one who made me get married, you know, like, you're not the one who put all of those on me. So I learned that through counseling. And so now I can look back and, like, not completely hate our first years of marriage because I know that it was, like, something completely different, like a personal thing that I was, like, didn't know how to navigate. You know what I mean? But yeah, completely different truths.
Yeah. And, like, coming away from that, like, it was like Sarah, you know, very much, like, was resentful of me and me not even knowing that I did anything.
Yeah, which made it so much worse.
Because, like, I'm sitting here, like, thinking things are great, and it was, you know, we hadn't learned how to communicate, and so it was never communicated to me that I was doing something hurtful or wrong. Right. And, you know, so it's like all of that, you know, to say, like, there really is two truths in a story.
Oh, yeah, that's where I was like, why are we talking about this again? I literally could not. I was like, how does this have to do with art? That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two truths to every story, and it doesn't diminish one party's story by any means.
Yeah. That being said, one person's, you know, truth may be factually incorrect, but it doesn't negate the way they felt.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Because you can come away from something with a very strong feeling, and through perspective or through time, the actual facts of the event can change in your mind. I'm saying on both sides. I'm not saying right. Accuser or the accused. I'm saying, like, in every scenario ever.
Yeah.
You actually, you talked about this in a couple podcasts ago. That you remember the feeling. You don't remember the actual thing. And we had an argument about
on memories.
Yes, on memories. Yes. Yeah. And so, like, yeah, I mean, I just think that you have to question things. You have to look at things from, you know, other perspectives and with empathy. And also talk to people.
Yeah. I don't even know how to steer that back to the conversation of this podcast. So there's that.
Yes. Well, we're also over time anyway. So we can end it on a heavy note.
Yes.
But I think I think ultimately, though, that's out of this whole podcast, I feel like that is the most valuable thing that we talked about, because I think it's real. And I think that perspective of, like, the hurt and pain that you felt in that moment versus the obliviousness of my moment.
Right.
And then also, we had no plans of talking about this.
Yeah.
In this podcast. And it's not, you know, it wasn't meant to be a plug.
Yeah.
But we did, you know, through counseling and through talking to people.
Yeah.
Like, that is how we were able, you know, to come to those realizations.
Right. And create, like, a really good plan of action. And it's why we're in New York now. Right.
We're in New York now. Also, I mean, I guess I'll speak for myself and you may say, yeah. That, I mean, I think both of us feel that our marriage is the best it's ever been, and it constantly is getting, you know, richer and richer. And that we, like, fall in love with each other more, like, every day.
Yeah. Maybe not every day, but yeah.
Every quarter.
Some days you're really hard to be around.
Ditto. Just kidding, my love.
But this is not a marriage counseling podcast, so.
Right. But we are brought to you by a counseling service.
Very happy to be partnering with them.
Yes.
They're amazing.
So we're going to end there. We're over time, but I feel like that was a really valuable conversation. Just as a reminder, this podcast is brought to you by Hint Water. You can check out Hint by going to hint.co/deeplycurious. Fantastic flavored water. Also brought to you by betterhelp.com/Jensen, a really valuable service. Just talking to somebody and like getting these things out. You know, I mean, I think unintentionally, this whole last segment was an ad for counseling.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in, you know, counseling services and you want to check one of them out, betterhelp.com/Jensen. Betterhelp.com/Jensen. Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll say it a third time. Betterhelp.com/Jensen. Also brought to you by our merch. You can check that out by going to shop.codyjensen.com. We would love it to walk down the street and see you guys repping some Deeply Curious merch. Or we also have a few pieces that say love harder, because if you haven't recognized, if you've listened to more than just this podcast, we believe that you should work hard, but you need to love harder.
Amen.
Okay. Well, wrapping this one up, we will see you next week.
Bye.